He spent decades as a successful business person. A self-described moderate, he and his husband moved to Sarasota to retire and become involved in the community. Running for a seat on the Sarasota School Board was part of that plan. But what he didn't expect, I assume, was a firestorm of hatred and criticism from a small but powerful, politically motivated group, ranging from the governor of Florida down to a smattering of vocal extremists who made it their mission to take him down. I'm, of course, talking about Tom Edwards, my guest today. Tom, welcome to Suncoast People.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, I'm going to start easy on you. You lived in New York prior. Why Sarasota?
It's a common question. My grandparents retired to Venice in the 70s, and so as a youngster, I came to Sarasota. Many years later, I became an avid rower, and rowing in Sarasota is one of the capitals of the world.
Yes, over Nathan Benderson.
I row there. I row in the Intercoastal Waterway. I do about 50,000 meters a week.
Holy cow. That must be a great workout.
It's a great workout, but also, you know, as that school board member that you described, it's a place where I clear my head, get grounded, and look at the sunrise, and row with my friends, and I disengage from politics.
And you know, and that's a question I ask most of my guests: is sort of how do you find yourself? How do you find your inner peace? What's your what's your happy place? And obviously, rowing is part of that for you.
There it is.
So you guys move to Sarasota. And at some point you decide to run for the school board. What's behind running for school board?
Well, honestly, I have retired, and retirement really didn't agree with me. So I thought, running for school board, I could use my business acumen and help oversee budgets and help strategize ideas and suggestions. I've done a lot of good school board work with my business background, but I never expected the political firestorm that happened shortly after I got there.
And it really seems to be just in recent years that this toxic environment, not only within a school board, but across politics, statewide and even nationwide, has just festered.
The reality is we are ground zero when it comes to school board politics. I sit right next to Bridget Ziegler, and just as I was elected, she started a CRT, in education, not indoctrination movement, and from that moment on, it's been politic after politic and extreme conversations at the dais, all the way including the termination of a very fine and highly qualified superintendent.
Your campaign tagline is leadership with integrity. What does that mean?
Well, before I answer that question, I'm going to say that I have a new campaign tagline, and it's called Proven Leadership with Integrity. And I'm proud of that. I have a little over 2 years of being an honest, forthright, community-minded school board member that cares for a couple of things: the quality of education, our students, our teachers, their reputations, and you can trust me. My book is my cover.
Do you find much integrity today?
That's a really interesting question. You know that Bridget Ziegler just was caught in a lie by a public records request around Vermillion, which was her sort of slick way of trying to introduce Hillsdale College into the curriculum of the Sarasota School District. And from my point of view, I am the opposite of that. You'll never catch me in a lie because there's no reason to lie. My book is my cover.
You've described Governor DeSantis's behavior, and this is from a Mother Jones article, as bullying because of the attacks that he's thrown specifically at you. How does it feel that the governor of a state is going after an individual school board member? I mean, you'd think he'd have bigger fish to fry.
You would think. And quite honestly, when that happened, when the list came out, I viewed it as an opportunity. Why would a governor target an individual school board member in Sarasota County? And I think it's because their bullying tactics is what has brought them to the point of their success. They've intimidated their peers, the public, LGBTQ plus, our Black community, our Hispanic community, anyone that was marginalized. And I am the poster child of being an LGBTQ plus school board member. So why not use that to his political advantage is what I think he thought he was doing. But he really just put fuel in my fire, and he's really electrified our community. The bullying that he did by putting me on the list was the foreground of those folks coming in to bully me live at the school board. And the community, the overwhelming support that the community gave to me and frankly themselves, because this is not a hateful community. Mm-hmm. And they came in numbers to the school board meeting with emails, with letters to the editor to say that is not who Sarasota is. And I'm proud of them. I'm proud of our community.
What should a school board be doing that this school board is not doing?
Well, another really good question. As simple as I could say, one of the things that school board members should be doing, go to community events, show up at graduations, visit the schools, talk to teachers. It's as simple as caring and really being visible. You're a school board member. Be in the school district. Be visible to your students. Be visible to your teachers. But more than that, be visible in the community. Be visible to your constituents. And lastly, pick one or two initiatives that you can get behind. For example, I've been instrumental in building a trades academy at Riverview High School. We, meaning the Gulf Coast Builders Exchange and I, in conjunction with our former superintendent, were able to raise $360,000 and turn an art class into a shop class. And we had an entry of 90 students for 60 positions. It's so successful that Trades Academy is going to be replicated at Venice High and also Northport High. And then secondly, I'm working with Sarasota Memorial Hospital and creating healthcare academies. And lastly, I would say another huge concern of mine personally is the mental health crisis that our students are experiencing, whether it's from 2 years of COVID or social media or any number of things. We have a very serious problem. So I attend mental health summits. I do what I can to be informed and to make recommendations to ease the crisis.
So you don't think that banning certain books will help the mental health crisis?
You know, we were talking about, I was at the school district earlier this morning meeting with our student services team, and we were talking about mental wellness. And quite frankly, as an LGBTQ youth, my own personal self-esteem was extraordinarily damaged. Why? Because there was no representation when I was a young man, and there was no identity in books, and there was no visibility in movies. And so after many years of therapy and building back my own self-esteem to be able to become a successful business person and now a successful school board member, I don't want that to happen to any of our youth. And so we have to work hard to make sure that representation for all our students, whether they're black or brown, LGBTQ, from the wealthiest of communities or from Title I school districts, they must all feel important and must all be welcome in our public school system.
What is the single biggest problem or hurdle that students are facing today?
Politics on the school board.
Simple as that. And what should that politics be replaced with?
It should be student-centric. When the board does get focused in on how do we close the achievement gap by building early education, by enhancing pre-K classrooms, by adding headcount into classrooms with our teachers, an additional instructional aid in all elementary classrooms to help with our students from pre-K to third grade, to get them over the hurdle and to make them literate. We have to get that done. And that's one of the things that I learned from Dr. Aspin, our former superintendent. If we miss it in the first pre-K to third grade, it's really hard to recover for their entire academic career. And so we must do a better job in those areas. And mental health and behavioral support is essential for making sure that they have all of the tools necessary in this ever-changing, fast, social media-centric world.
And what about that level of support for parents?
Another really good question, because we as a school board tend to focus and think about our community as a wealthy, well-to-do, mom and dad kind of environment. The reality is 47% of our community is at or below the poverty line. And that doesn't only dictate if there are two parents in a household, but often that can be the ramification of poverty. So what we have to do is not only provide the supports for our students in all the areas that I mentioned, but also provide the opportunity for parents to participate in those same kinds of collaborative moments where the student, the teacher, and the parent or the caregiver is part of the solution for that student. And frankly, it becomes a win-win-win for the whole community, because everybody gets behind our youth and our students when they're going through the education process.
But it doesn't sound like that's what's happening right now.
You can't. You keep hitting it, because this new school board was seated in January. Here's what we've done. We had to pass a law or a policy to allow parents to walk to class, to get rid of social emotional learning, to allow for the taping of IEP meetings. Let me tell you that
What's an IEP for those who
individual education plan. It's
Okay.
where a student requires additional supports.
Okay.
And so, and you know, those meetings can be really stressful. But I just want to run down the list for a second. We got rid of a support for a technological support for managing all our policies and procedures that would make it easier for the public and frankly for school board members. But all of those things, if you run down, have nothing to do with academic education, with a solution for our students. They were all politically motivated, and we terminated a superintendent. So since that new school board, not one policy was passed because of this is academic excellence, or this will enhance the instructional opportunities for our students. It was all politically motivated. And what's more important is the social emotional learning, that affects all of our students and their families. It teaches things like kindness, empathy, sympathy. I mean, who could have a problem with those kinds of really values that all of us share? That's not politically
being nice,
nice
to your playmates, to your classmates.
Taping of IEP meetings. Do you know how many requests we had last year? 13. Walking kids to class. Do you know how many parents are walking kids to class? 130 out of 46,000.
Yeah.
And so all of this time, all of this political debate, all of this attention in the media was only politically motivated.
Going back to March 21st, there was a school board meeting where it was, quite frankly, there were some pretty horrible things that were being said during that meeting, and you put a stop to it in I will use the word dramatic way, in that you put just more than words into action. You put your body into action, and we do have a little clip just to show what happened that night. We'll take a look at that.
Because what Tom stands for and what Tom wants to do to our children in this school district isn't what a majority of what...
Everyone, excuse me, calm down. There have been multiple comments about lots of different people. If we just allow the people to speak and move forward, we cannot. The picking and choosing.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to sit here and allow.
Okay, we're going to recess.
And so, Tom, what happened? You were sitting there at the dais with the other school board members. There was someone from the public who was speaking. Describe to me what happened.
Well, 2 weeks prior, there had been a public commenter who had made the narrative that because I was from the LGBTQ plus community, I was a groomer, and that I was reading in an elementary classroom because I was grooming those students to become members of the LGBTQ plus community. And that caused a firestorm.
So let me just clarify here. So reading to a group of children is going to convert their sexual orientation. That's what I'm hearing you say.
That is, in fact, what that public commenter said. Because I am a member of the LGBTQ plus community and I was reading to elementary students, I was grooming them to become LGBTQ plus members of the community. So 2 weeks later, a similar episode was beginning to occur, and I leaned over to the chair, Bridget Ziegler, and said, "You need to shut that down." And she said to me, no, she was going to let the free speech. And so I stood up and walked out of the school board meeting in protest because I knew, yes, it was be dramatic of walking, but I knew it would shut down the meeting. But more importantly, it would shut down the narrative that because you're LGBTQ plus, you're automatically a groomer, and that you're grooming students, and did it include pedophilia and all the ugliness attached to that. I needed to shut that narrative down so the uninformed public did not get that as an impression, and our students did not hear that, and their friends did not hear that. It's important that we shut down lies and innuendo and ugly language and hate language.
There's some recent polling, and certainly in some communities around the country, where there seems to be a shift away from that ugly rhetoric. And even looking at polling numbers, I mean, now Governor DeSantis is announced his his candidacy for president, and there's pushback from people within his own party from some of his words and actions and the words and actions of his followers. Do you think that we may have hit a point where the pendulum is going to swing?
I think you're accurate. I've been saying to people now for the last few weeks that I think our politics here in Florida have crested. I think that the governor has misstepped with Disney. And when I look at the community support that we have here in Sarasota, that I receive personally from those hate speeches, many times people would start their conversations, I'm a Republican, or I voted for the other school board members, but you're the only voice of reason that's up there. I made a mistake. I cast the wrong votes. So I think that our community, our state, and frankly our country live between the two 40-yard lines. Some of them are a little more left, some are a little more right, but most of us live between those two 40-yard lines. And what's happening from book banning to the fights with Disney and the extremism, canceling out Black history, all of the things that have been happening to us, frankly, women's rights at 6 weeks. I mean, you just keep stacking it up, and it's way too extreme for our community who lives between those 40-yard lines. And I think you're going to start to see center lane governance, which is what I represent on the school board. I've been that guy since I've been seated.
In the introduction, described you, as you've described yourself, as a moderate. What is a moderate?
I'll use the example of the mask policy. I had both sides, which it was hard to discern who was the larger, who was the majority. Both had data, both don't mask my child, save my family, it's not important to mask. At the end of the day, I listened to both of them, and my recommendation was, okay, I'm going to mask these kids because I'm mostly concerned about them being in and out of the class and missing instruction. I'm concerned about them taking a virus home to a grandparent or somebody that is immune compromised. But at the same time, I understand that masking does affect instructional. We can't see facial instruction, all of the things that the data was explaining. So I introduced an amendment that said when we have 3 days of 8% positivity rate at 8% or lower, then the masking becomes optional. We were at 22%.
Yeah.
And so to go from 22% to 8%, I knew in my head that we're on the decline. And if we're on the decline, then the virus, the communicability of the virus was on the low side. Do you know how long our mask policy lasted? 3 weeks. You can't tell me that a student's instruction was that interrupted for 3 weeks. And I really did try to listen to both sides and come up with a middle ground solution. That is an example of how I govern and how I pay attention, with the exception, whatever it takes to have the best student outcome, whether it's mental health, reading interventions, pre-K, that's where I do my focus.
We're going to take a pause right now, and when we come back, we're going to talk more with Tom Edwards and about what he believes, what has shaped his beliefs, a little bit about his upbringing, and perhaps what may be in store for the future for him. We'll be right back. Thank you for watching and supporting Suncoast People. And if you like what we're doing, please make sure to follow and subscribe. If you're feeling generous, consider supporting Suncoast People through patreon.com/Suncoast People. And we're back. My guest today is Tom Edwards, and anyone who watches Suncoast People knows that we generally stay away from issues and politics, religion, and a lot of these hot button topics. But I have to say right now that I wanted Tom Edwards on because I believe that his message has been distorted, has been misconstrued, and that as he said, his primary focus is on the education and excellence of students. But right now, Tom, I want to talk a little bit about who you are as an individual. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio.
Youngstown.
It was sort of an idyllic childhood in the sense that, we all went biking, we had a fishing hole, we had a public park for swimming, kind of that Opie.
And you went to public school.
I went to public schools. I had an incredible public education. I wish I could tell you that I had a standout teacher. I don't recall having a standout teacher, but I will tell you that I had an incredible education, built a career on it.
You did, and you started your own business, or you bought a business. How did you get into? Because you've had a couple of businesses.
My first business was a strategic resourcing company. It was a staffing organization. I started as an individual recruiter, had a partner, developed outside temporary placement. After 30 years, we had on-site outsourcing, temporary placement, direct hire, multiple lines of industries that we supported. We sent out 2,000 people a day, and I had 150 people that worked for us.
Holy cow.
I sold my share to my partner. I was still a young guy, and I wanted to try something else.
And what was that?
I bought a liquor store and turned it into a wine and spirits store. We put a residential kitchen on the sales floor, and we had guest chefs, and we had food and wine pairings, and we had educational seminars, and it became a destination for our community to learn about good food and good wines and good cocktails in the spirit of what we learned when we traveled in Europe.
In the spirit, no pun intended.
No pun
of spirits.
intended.
Okay, all right. So where did running for public office come into play?
When the wine store sold, we were both on the crest of our 60s, and we thought, oh, this is a good time for us to retire to a warm climate. And Sarasota, as we mentioned, was one of the rowing capitals of the world. We were familiar with Sarasota after visiting my grandparents for many years. And so it was a quick, easy fit for us. It felt like coming home, quite frankly. And I was approached to run for school board because the incumbent school board member did not have the very best reputation. And so after doing my due diligence, I've never run for office, I'm not a politician, but I knew I was just better than the other guy. And I went out and ran for office. Coincidentally, it was right at the COVID shutdown. So my entire campaign was on Zoom.
Wow. What do? You mentioned rowing earlier. Are there any other things that you do to kind of recharge? I mean, you've got a pretty stressful job, haven't you?
I do recharge my batteries, and I am really concerned about self-care because of the stress. It has been a very difficult time period on school board. But what I will tell you is if you invest in spending your time in the community, whether it's going to museums, whether it's supporting nonprofit organizations, attending fundraisers, being visible in the community, I've developed some of the best friendships that I've ever had. I never expected to develop the level of friendships and the support that I have within the community. And it's a great town, it really is. And for too long, people have sat quiet because of the bullying, because of the intimidation. They're starting to bubble up. They're starting to be frustrated. So I will tell you that one of my favorite pastimes is just being out with my friends.
You mentioned the being such a great place to live, but I think you and I both know LGBTQ plus people who are contemplating leaving, who are in the process of leaving, or who have left Florida. But you remain. Why?
Well, a couple of things. One of my questions that I always ask when I'm in a public speaking mode is I ask people, how many people here have a sexual orientation? And within a few minutes, everybody has their hands up. It's not just the LGBTQ plus community that is interested in leaving Florida, but understandably why they would want to, because of the persecution that's coming from Tallahassee. But many members of our community have fallback plans if it gets too painful and too difficult to remain in Florida. And we've talked about all those reasons that people are dissatisfied with the current state of affairs in governance. So I don't want to single it to just LGBTQ plus community that's fed up. The whole community is getting fed up.
And right at the tail end of the last segment, we started talking about that pendulum, and that perhaps it has crested. Where do you see things going in the next couple of years?
I think it starts with our community first, and I'm encouraged. I see a lot of people attending school board meetings on a regular basis. I see and read the letters to the editor on a regular basis, and you'll see that they're becoming significantly more balanced, if not concerned about the oppression and what, quite frankly, is coming from an authoritative environment as relates to governance. Many have compared a lot of the things that are going on, from book banning to the attacks on marginal communities to the attack on public education, to be akin to fascism. And frankly, I am concerned, and that's why our whole community is concerned and considering leaving Florida. And it's important that all of us not run away. It's important that we stay. That's why I stay. I'm here to fight the fight. I need the community to come out of the shadows and fight with me. And fighting only means being visible, expressing your opinion, showing solidarity. That's what I mean by being the moderate majority.
You're beginning to sound like a politician.
I didn't intend to be one, but I see that center lane governance, and I don't think it's politics. I think it's our values. I think that's who we are.
Do you have any aspirations for any other public office?
None whatsoever.
Really?
Really. I did this because I wanted to pay it forward. I am so proud of my career, and I want to give those same opportunities to the students and to their families, and make sure that the American dream is alive and well for all our students.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you, or anything you want to touch on that you think is maybe yet another elephant in the room that we should be talking about today?
I think the biggest concern that I have that's immediate is the next superintendent. I'm a reluctant participant in the superintendent search. The superintendent that we had was an incredible partner. He really helped me become the school board member that I am. He gave me the flexibility to want to get out to the community and to bring back ideas and suggestions and good partnerships, whether it be through the Gulf Coast Builders Exchange or the hospital. And when I look, frankly, at the Citizens Advisory Committee, each of us school board members were asked to provide 3 members of the community. I selected a same-sex couple that have a student in our school system. I selected a woman of color who has had 2 graduates from the Sarasota school system, one still at Booker High. She also is a participant in the Freedom School. And I selected Kelly Kirshner, who is the chairman of the board of Unidos Now, one of the largest youth Hispanic organizations here in Sarasota County. Most people don't realize that 27% of the student population here in Sarasota County is in fact Hispanic. So I really wanted a good representation of our community, of people that actually utilize our school system. And what did I get from my fellow board members? It looks like political theater to me.
We have to leave it at that. Tom Edwards, thank you so much for being on Suncoast People. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And I want to thank you for watching. And again, I don't usually go down the road of issues in politics, but I truly, truly believe that when somebody is vilified, when somebody is demonized in public, that person deserves to be heard. So in the meantime, thanks for watching. I'm Robert Tim.